Give the dog the invisible bone. I still don't understand it, but we'll spend about an hour talking about that and all things Peacemaker. Welcome to the Bladtcast, our Peacemaker special. Just want to get the bell in right away because I actually remembered it. As always, I am Christian Blatt, joined by Jeff DeRay.
Hey.
I really just have to point down the way the screen is formatted for our visual listeners. But
The Grady Bunch.
Yeah, exactly. And below there in the center square, Jim J. Bullock, or also William J. Sterling.
Hello.
And making a triumphant return to the Bladtcast, John Nolan, a.k.a. the Raging Rhino. I did almost call you the Rampaging Rhino. That's a Marvel character, and we're not talking about that today.
That's right. Cheers.
Yeah, and John, I think the last time you were on was for Suicide Squad, right?
That is correct. Yes,
you're our DC our DC heavy hitter. You know, not that Will isn't, but you're. I like to think of you as Harvey Keitel, the wolf in Pulp Fiction. You're here to clean up anything that we don't quite understand. Because, and again, I'm not trying to soft sell anything that Will might know, but I don't know anything about any of these people. And I think it's a great place to start for you, John. Talk about Peacemaker, how well you knew the character before the Suicide Squad, and, just sort of your thought for how he transferred from the page to the Suicide Squad and now his own series.
Didn't know him too well. Like most, DC fans, the first time I saw him was Crisis on Infinite Earths, when the old Charlton heroes get merged into, the DC universe. Most people are probably more familiar with the analog of Peacemaker. When Alan Moore wanted to write Watchmen, he originally wanted to use the old Charlton heroes, but Len Wein, his editor, talked him out of it, and instead he created analog. So Peacemaker in Watchmen becomes the comedian.
Len Wein, the creator of the all-new, all-different X-Men.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Probably was underpaid if I had to guess. So that's why.
Len Wein is one of the one of those people that kind of gets lost in all the big comic book names, but yeah, he really is a giant.
Well, he wrote one story of the all-new, all-different X-Men, so it's very easy to forget him. But he is the creator. He's the creator of Wolverine while he was working on the Incredible Hulk, and also apparently involved in Crisis on Infinite Earths, which we never really delved into on this show, but I read that for the first time a couple of years ago, and it was I can't believe how much story they packed into a single issue.
Massive, isn't it?
George Perez is not doing well now, but in his prime, the number of panels on a single page of Crisis on Infinite Earths is baffling. So he was one of the Charlton characters. Like Blue Beetle was also one of those, unless I'm mistaken.
Yep. Yeah. Blue Beetle, Question, Captain Atom, Nightshade, Thunderbolt, a few others, Judo Master.
Yeah, our friend Jeff Winstead, who is sometimes on to talk DC stuff and just in general, he has a comic book called The Alternate, and he figured out sort of a workaround where he featured a couple of Charlton characters in a story that he's working on because I don't know, something about public domain, and I don't get all that. So, all right. So the actual Peacemaker character, the only image I ever saw is an issue of Robin's standalone series where Peacemaker is standing next to him, and I've only seen that since the series. It's not somebody who I saw a lot at the comic book stores. Will, was he somebody that you knew much or anything about before the Suicide Squad?
No, not at all. I mean, Blue Beetle and the Question are the only two of those characters that I know a lot about. I love the Question; he's one of my favorite characters. But yeah, I'd never heard of Peacemaker until the movie.
Yeah, but what's the answer? We'll be right back after this. And Jeff, I'm going to assume maybe you didn't know him that well, but when a movie like the Suicide Squad comes out, did you want to do any any research and look up some of those characters? Because I know you've done that for other projects, but that wasn't one where you were inspired to do that.
No, and because it seemed like the intention of the movie was for them to be obscure characters you'd never heard of. That's why he tried to choose little known characters so that we're not going in being like, okay, waiting for this thing that I know, this beat that I'm familiar with in every other thing they're featured in.
Right.
So I didn't waste
know.
my time looking them up because the point was not to know them so we could get introduced to them.
Yeah.
I didn't even know Bloodsport, the Idris Elba character. So
well,
maybe I'd read somewhere at some point, but
he's a copper. You got to remember that about him.
I guess that said, I did know of King Shark. Like there were some
That's
characters in that Suicide Squad that were obvious. Like our Harley Quinn has been pretty big for a little bit. And
I'm not familiar. I'm not familiar with her.
Never heard of her. She's
never.
like this obnoxious girl that was in these Batman comic.
Obnoxious girl. You're gonna have to be more specific.
Broad.
We're toxic. Toxic is fun. Well, Rick Flag is. I feel like was one of the better known characters. Or am I wrong about that?
I mean, I didn't know of him really that well until the first Suicide Squad movie.
Okay.
Like these are all characters that in my 30 some odd years of reading DC Comics, maybe they popped up like in random scenes and shit, but like I'd never seen a lot of focus put on them.
Right. So even for you, John, the Peacemaker, seeing him on screen, it was kind of a blank canvas for you.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I did see him in issues here and there, and he's one of those characters that a lot of creators really just don't know what to do with him. So he just kind of became he evolved into this kind of what we see James Gunn do, kind of that offbeat, really weird and wacky extremist.
Yeah, and I think when watching the Suicide Squad with Will, I don't think that this was the character that I was like, who I really need more of is the Peacemaker. And until the post-credit scene or maybe mid-credit scene, I assumed that was one of the characters we were least likely to get more of because, both he and Rick Flag appeared to have died. But I have said a lot about this show, about Peacemaker. It is definitely the show that none of us realized we needed, but I like to think we deserved it. And, for those of us, as we talked last week, who suffered through Book of Boba Fett, I think we also deserved to have Peacemaker in our week to just bring all the joy and the fun that Jon Favreau was sucking out of us on a weekly basis over on Disney Plus. It's a little editorializing there, but that's all right. Just sort of big picture, because we've talked in passing about Peacemaker here on the show, but John, just sort of we'll talk a little bit about my favorite part of this, because you had written this on Twitter. You tried to get your wife to watch the show with you, right?
Yeah. You would figure naked John Cena or penis through the tidy whities would be enough incentive for her to watch it. No, not at all. I think the mistake I made was showing her the opening credits first, because I thought that they were hilarious, and she just sat there just jaw dropped like, what the hell is this?
Yeah. And so you never won her over, right?
No.
Yeah, our friend Dominicus Saxon, who I'm realizing now I didn't tweet out the link, and that's probably the only reason he's not in the chat right now. But he did get his wife to watch, so if he pops in at any point, I'll ask him to explain what it was. Did he have like one of those Silence of the Lambs wells in his basement where it was like you're either watching Peacemaker or you're getting the hose? But we'll find out if he jumps in. So what did you think when, this sort of, he had plenty of screen time in the Suicide Squad, but still a character that we didn't know much about. Even you didn't know much about. So as the show goes along, what were your thoughts? Even starting from the first episode and as we got more.
Yeah, the first episode, it really grabs you. From the very beginning through the opening credits. The ending was just like a kind of nice big shocking moment. It's like that, to draw you in.
Yeah.
And as it goes on, you really see more facets to the character that was missing from the Suicide Squad. And really, that's kind of the reason why you didn't like him very much, because he really was an asshole. And it's like, I don't want anything else to do with him. But you see the different facets and the kind of the crap that he had to go through. And you realize, he at the end, he really wants to be a better person.
Yeah, Will, what do you think about the idea that maybe the stance that Harcourt takes on him in the early episodes, and as that evolves, it's sort of like how all of us in the audience are feeling about him when the show starts, you
Yeah.
know? And I think it's hard to not warm up to him when you start to understand, you know? It's like, it's like, yeah, because you can feel for a character who is to some degree a homicidal maniac. I have spent most of my life really feeling and understanding for Frank Castle, the Punisher. You understand
Sure.
how he got the way he did. And I don't know. I mean, I feel like that's a lot of the character. Did you go on a Harcourt-like journey with Chris Smith, the Peacemaker? Will?
Yeah, I think so. It's still like in a zone where I kind of wanted a little bit more from the arc, and I understand that they're probably reserving things now that they know they get a season 2, but I did, like I said, when we saw the movie, I was very mad and upset that he killed Rick Flag, and so at first I was like, I don't really want to see a show with this guy because I really liked Rick Flag and he killed him, and that's bullshit. But it did. I mean, I realized like I really ended up enjoying the show, and as you've said, which is kind of funny, it's like we never thought we'd live in a world where the roles were reversed, and like we thought we'd all love Mandalorian and Peacemaker would be some horseshit, and it's actually the opposite. And so I think that's been a pleasant surprise to meet a character I know nothing about and do kind of go on a little journey of, I don't know, falling in love with him.
And I think he's all in for it. What about you, Jeff? Sort of, approaching it as a series and as it went along.
I think, I mean, it makes sense. So I watched a video about Dave Filoni intentionally making the Ahsoka character shitty in the very beginning of Clone Wars so that she could grow, so that you have character development.
That's a great note, because I remember watching Clone Wars when it premiered, and I had a lot of trouble getting into it because I'm like, I'm supposed to just accept this really annoying character.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's like I watched a video basically about the 4 episodes where she sucks, and then finally gets her comeuppance, so you start to like her, and then grows into the character we all know and love now. And so it seems almost like this followed a similar blueprint, where it's like he was intentionally the heel, but not all the way the bad guy in the movie, so that we could have this show where we see, oh, why are you such a dick? Oh, okay, well, there's bigger dicks in your life, and you're just, doing the best you can, or something like that. So I thought it was good. It made sense to me. It seems like it's a good blueprint. Have somebody suck in something else where they don't have to be your main guy, and then you can have them spin off into something where they actually develop into a more well-rounded character.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's because it's given a choice at this point, I would much rather see what Peacemaker's up to than Harley Quinn. I feel like they squeezed that sponge a little too tightly for me right now, and I don't need her at the moment, and I'm way more excited for seeing him in season 2 of the show than whatever she might be in next. And I'm just using her as the most high profile. And it's not even that I wouldn't be interested in. Who's seen the animated series for Harley Quinn? It's on my I want to see it. Yeah. So you've seen it, John. Jeff, have you seen that?
I tried to watch it and it just wasn't doing it for me. It was just too many I don't know. I didn't think it was that funny. I don't think it's bad. It just wasn't my jam.
What do you think of it, John?
I think if you watch it, you need to really embrace the absurd and stupid. So, but it is fun.
Well, that's what we're all about on this show: the absurd and the stupid,
but not fun.
I was gonna say, I'm pretty sure Margot Robbie's doing the Barbie movie, because I just saw Simu Liu cast in that.
I mean, if they use that Barbie World song, "Come on, Barbie, let's go party," I'll see it. Just
if they don't use it, I'll sue as false advertising. Like those people who sued yesterday for, what was it, Ana de Armas not being in it, even though she was in a trailer.
Oh, I didn't even realize that.
There's 2 fans who sued the movie yesterday for millions of dollars, claiming false advertising because they rented it for $6 each on its streaming service because they're big fans of Ana de Armas. And she then wasn't in it. Yeah, and she's apparently in one of the, probably an early trailer, because I don't even remember her being in a trailer.
Well, if we were able to sue for all the movies that disappointed us, well,
I'd like to sue for the Hulk not being in Infinity War. That was some bullshit.
Yeah, let's just say if people could sue for movies they weren't happy with, Zack Snyder would be broke. But anyway, that's just for me.
I'd like
and
to
I'm just
sue
trying to
for
stir
there
the
being
pot.
more Spider-Man in Spider-Man. That was bullshit.
We could use
they
more
said there was
Spider-Man.
one Spider-Man versus all the bad guys, and they just threw in a bunch of dickhead Spider-Man. Not what I wanted.
Yeah. So there's so many facets to this show, which again, everything about it is not the way that I expected to think of it or the way that I expected to be talking about it on a show. But there is so much character depth in characters that seem so preposterous. And I want to go to, I think for me, well, no, it's probably my third favorite character on the show because my second favorite character would be Eagly. But let's talk about Vigilante. Now, I think he is a character that is a little bit more well known in the comics. But John, I feel like this isn't really an accurate representation of what Vigilante is like, because he wouldn't be like, Peacemaker's wannabe BFF, right?
If you were basing the character off of the comics, he is absolutely nothing like him at all.
Gotcha.
The costume and the name are the same, and that is it.
Yeah. Wow.
Vigilante is actually a very tragic character. He was actually created by Marv Wolfman and George Perez in Teen Titans. He was a lawyer, a district attorney. Classic comic book trope. See if this sounds familiar. A mob boss kills his family.
Wait a minute.
He goes off, becomes a weapons expert, learns how to fight, exact revenge.
Yeah.
And at first, non-lethal. As he goes through his story, he slowly loses his moral compass and eventually begins to take out anybody who gets in his way, including the innocents. Doesn't help that Peacemaker along the way kills one of his best friends because they don't actually like each other at all in the comics. And I don't know if this has happened anywhere else in any other comic book, but his solo series, Vigilante solo series, ends with him committing suicide.
Oh, God.
Jesus. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that the prequel to Casper, I think it's little known that that's actually how the story started, but you're right. I doubt that. So Vigilante commits suicide. I'm going to go on a hunch here. Was Marv Wolfman still writing at that point, or had somebody else taken over?
No, it was Paul Kupperberg.
Okay. Yeah. And he made the rounds after the finale because they did have a really nice, one of those screens where they, basically where they say thanks to everyone whose stories influenced us, but didn't get paid any extra, or maybe got paid a little extra. Because I know Marvel's really bad about paying anybody, and DC does a little bit better. You don't, it's not like you get paid as like a co-writer or anything. That's fascinating that he did that. Is that a character that you personally, John, liked? And do you feel like that shiny happy arc where he kills himself is worth reading?
I actually got into reading Vigilante in the last story arc of that original series, and so that is one of those comics that really just stuck with me.
How old were you when you read it? Did you read it when you were younger?
Gosh, I would have 12 or 13. I would guess.
Yeah, because I mean, some of the stuff that I read in at that point, like in that like very short period of time where characters died and they actually died, and things that were tragic. If I read them when I was younger, they definitely stuck with me. Let's talk about the fun on-screen version that we get of Vigilante. Let's start with you, Jeff. Just your thoughts on Vigilante as we see him, working in the restaurant, and he's excited that Peacemaker's out, and sort of the evolution through the 8 episodes of Vigilante.
He's hilarious. He's the classic wild card character, right? Where he's the funniest because he can say and do anything. He's your like Roger from American Dad, or your Charlie in It's Always Sunny, where they're just gonna say or do something to drive or to give you your comedic beat. I thought he was funny. I thought he served his purpose well. I think his backstory is interesting, but I also think it makes sense that they didn't dive into it too much, because it's like, we don't really need to know why he's such a psychopath. It's just funny that he's like a psychopath, but genuinely or generally seems good-natured otherwise.
Yeah, and there's James Gunn has been very involved in commenting on each episode, and he and the cast would actually do watch-alongs. I believe it was on Saturdays, and there's a lot of tweets where if you hadn't seen the episode yet, you kind of had to just really ignore Twitter because of all the retweets and the likes and things. But he talked a lot about Vigilante to him and how it was very important that he is actually, for all of the interpersonal and weird, shortcomings, that he really is a master at killing people. And that was in the commentary that he provided after the scene in the jail, where it's just like, yeah, he had no worries about killing everyone and getting out of the jail. And I think it's important for a character like that, that if he was also not good at killing, then you just sort of like, well, how is he able to get away with all that? And Will, in the context of a serious dramatic story, I think a character like this sort of version of Vigilante would be very hard to like. I think if this was a fully dramatic, non-comical take, I think also Peacemaker would be very hard to like. But what did you think about watching Vigilante as Chris's BFF?
I liked him. His voice, especially when the mask is on, and even like the actor a little bit, he reminds me a lot of my friend Zach Luna, who's been in the chat here every once in a while. And so I just kept hearing Zach in my head as Vigilante, and I was like, this makes me so happy. So there's like I had just a weird connection to like feeling like, oh, it would have been fun for me, would love to do see him in the cosplay. But anyway, as a character, he's funny. I think it fits obviously, like you said, the narrative, the story, because Peacemaker and a lot of these characters, I think that's the point of the Suicide Squad, is like James Gunn is also saying, like, comic books used to be inherently so dumb and silly, like there was a level to which they were just like churning out characters like with zero regard to like how this was actually gonna go 20 years later, like Polka Dot Man,
Kite Man.
And so he's what
Kite Man,
and yeah, the Nathan Fillion character with his floating arms.
TDK.
Yeah. So I think it fits the show to change him and make him more silly, but I wouldn't be surprised if season 2 like adds some depth to him now.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Go ahead, Jeff.
Question: is the song "Detachable Penis" about TDK?
Yeah.
Our pal in the chat, Sam Whitfield, Vigilante looks like young Will when I first met him. So, yeah, what aren't you telling us, Will Sterling? But and Raging Rhino, John, you're on the show. You don't need to comment. Nice American Dad reference by Jeff. By the way, this week's episode of American Dad that is set on a ski slope. My pal Tim Sicardo, who's a writer there, wrote that episode. He's been on Bladtcast a few times. He's written like 6 episodes now because he's been there for years, and it's a great gig, and I know he loves it there. So check that out. Yeah, I think the dynamic with Vigilante is pretty great, especially just how needy he is, and it's like when Economos, Diebeard uses the chainsaw, and he's like, yeah, but wouldn't it have been so cool if you just thrown the chainsaw to me? Because and Peacemaker's like, what? No, he's like, but it's talking about how I was going to use, just that, like, and that scene says so much about him. And it's also hysterical that I guess when they wrapped, that actor went back to his normal voice, which is British, and John Cena literally had no idea that he was British the whole time, because he just stayed in it the whatever the months where they were doing the show. And thinking about there's not a lot that I've seen John Cena in. There's a great video where he speaks a little Chinese if anybody wants to find it. But other than that, I honestly never expected that I would be like, I'm going to really enjoy that John Cena project at any point in my life. I'm not a big wrestling guy, never have been. But I just think he's perfect. And from a performance standpoint, we have a resident thespian here, of course, Mr. William J. Starling, featured on shows such as Blackish and Pam and Tommy. And that's just in the last like 2 months.
Where you really see me act.
Yeah,
I really give nuanced, very nuanced, especially as the sheriff of Nottingham guy.
Yeah, and you were correct that you should have been named the sheriff of Nottingham. But
I thought it would be Nuttingham.
That also would have been great.
That also would have been great.
Yeah.
But talk about, look, obviously, if I hate to upset people who are wrestling fans, but if you're part of a big operation like WWE, you're going to have a skill set that gives you a decent background in acting, certain kind of parts. And so I still was impressed by what he was able to bring. And apparently there's scenes where he legitimately made himself cry, which, I can't do it. I'm sure, Will, you could do a good camera cry for us right now, but what did you think of, him from a performance, even after the Suicide Squad, what we were able to get from this guy who is essentially a wrestler who's, started doing some acting,
right?
Just like my pal DJ, Dwayne Johnson, as you guys call him, The Rock. But what did you think, just sort of that aspect of what John Cena brought to the show?
I think he's good. I'm kind of in a phase now where I'm sort of burned out on The Rock because I feel like it is kind of a one-note thing from him and everything that he does. And I genuinely think that John Cena actually has real range. And I was surprised. I mean, when he first started acting in movies, it was like The Marine, and obviously easy, whatever bullshit.
And The Marine movies. 2. Let's not forget.
The Marine 2, Book of Shadows. And I really actually think he gave a good performance, and it lends itself to the character. He's also very funny, so it does sort of organically subvert the expectation of him being this like macho movie star action hero guy to actually be this like tender-hearted sweet dude, and for that to be conveyed like authentically was great. I thought he did a very good job.
Yeah, I just the tragic backstory that they give him and how he processes it by mostly not processing it. I think anybody from the WWE might not have been able to pull that off, although if Undertaker wanted to try, I would, as long as he was still dressed like the Undertaker. And I mean, just, the story of his brother, and Robert Patrick is phenomenal in most things, not just Terminator 2, the sort of maligned what was the final season of the X-Files before they did a reboot. I thought he was good in that. I've seen him in a lot of things, and just for a completely and utterly unlikable character, there are no redeeming qualities to him. I thought that Robert Patrick was great. Now that suit that he wears, that tells me that has to be a little bit more of an established character, John. So what do we is that a fair representation of Robert Patrick's character, Peacemaker's dad?
Yeah, well, I mean, the costume definitely is very comic book accurate,
right?
And yeah, he is just like he is in the comics or in the show. He's that typical right wing douchebag, racist, far right wing. So yeah, and I don't know. I think it's I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole, but I think it's important that, look, there's a word that you would expect that character to use that he doesn't, but then he does use the slur word for homosexual that I feel like if he didn't say that, it would feel disingenuous. I don't know. I don't think you need it. And I think that we live in a time where it's just like, yes, this guy would definitely use the N-word, but we're not going to put that on our show.
Yeah.
And what do you think about sort of those kind of decisions that go into it, Will? This is a guy that has no redeeming qualities. Accurately, he would use that word. He would use a word that he didn't use. Is it just easier to be like, yeah, but you know what he would say, let's just not have him do it?
I think
I had
so.
that thought because when he said it, it's like, nobody really says that much anymore.
Right.
You know?
I think
Yeah.
so. And it's also, it keeps in the good naturedness of the show. I think still at its core, despite being like really violent, it is like a sweet show. You know what I mean? And I think that's not the narrative. If it was a drama, probably, like that would be that, because we're trying to say like, this is a realistic depiction of this thing. This is like a lampooning of these things. And we know that that's exactly who he is. And I think you can fill in the blanks. And I don't think it's anybody who like criticizes shows like this that are not serious. That's like, he would talk like this. I'm like, okay, well, John Cena dressed like a fucking douchebag. So
John Cena has a bedpan on his head.
Right. I don't think it fucking matters if we're period or racist accurate that he uses like slurs. It's just.
So you're saying that the show where the guy's
now.
best friend is an eagle is not the most dramatic series on television today?
I mean, I wouldn't say that, but
yeah. There should be more shows with eagles on there. I always thought that was what was missing from The Wire, is that no one on that show had an eagle as a best friend.
That's why I couldn't get into it. I got like 3 episodes into season 1, and I was like, where's the fucking eagle?
Where's the eagle?
Did he say any racist slang to the Asian lead detective who Goff ended up taking over? So it's like he because what I was thinking about is he didn't really necessarily have as much occasion to use that word. Because he wasn't necessarily interacting with the black characters. He was going after his white son.
Right.
Whereas when he had the opportunity to be racist to somebody's face, he was pretty happy.
But to be fair,
racist.
I don't think he actually used, there's a handful of, nationality specific Asian slurs.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And, Margaret Cho, like 30 years ago, had a joke about, somebody calling her one, and she's like, "You idiot, I'm a other one,"
Right.
So it's like
he did call her a couple of things.
Well, that's what but I thought it was a lot of like, okay, but for the most part, what it was like sort of creative, just referencing. But go ahead.
Didn't he call her Dragon Lady at one point? That's one where it's like,
wait, so that wasn't a compliment?
No,
oh my God, I have to
so.
really be more careful when I talk to my mother.
That's one of those ones where it's like, obviously I can say it, where it's just like, it's not nice, but it's not super mean.
The implication is there. I definitely feel like, and also it's kind of a concerning thing, I think, because we've seen it post-COVID, is that there is definitely, I think culturally people feel like, it's not as bad slurs about Asian people, so like we could wiggle those in there. And it's like there's a lot of unfair the way that we view Asian people as being like nice in general and smart. You know what I mean?
There's a lot of
there's
a lot of that.
If we use these words.
My our friend Roxy Stryer has been on here a few times. She just talks about a lot. She's very vocal about just the casual, like, but I'm just saying that about Jewish people, know, and people are very dismissive. It's like, slurs against black people, we can agree those are wrong. But what about some of the other slurs?
Yeah, we could say some things about, exactly.
Yeah. So
see, I assume that all Japanese people are in the Yakuza and all Chinese people are in the Triad. So
I'm waiting to hear the part that's wrong.
You wrapped up the morning of playing GTA 3.
Yeah. Let's because her character came up. She wasn't who I was going to talk about next, but let's talk about Annie Chang is the name of the actress who plays Sophie Song. And James Gunn had a great observation about why she was cast, because they'd seen a lot of actresses who were good as Detective Song or good as the butterfly. What was the butterfly's name? Goff.
Yeah.
So, but she was the only one who was able to be good as both characters. And I thought that there's obviously such a difference between those 2 points, and I thought she did a great job. And like, it's very much in the tone of the show that like her partner would always try to tag on with jokes that didn't work. And, that's like that's always the sort of stuff that I've enjoyed in movies and stuff. It's like, no, man, come on. I had a good one. You didn't need to get in on this. And I think that guy was great too. I just thought that all in all, there was some great casting, and I believe they made this in Vancouver. And a lot of times it's just like, well, who can you get in Vancouver? There's plenty of actors there, but at the same time, you're a little bit more limited, I think, just because there aren't as many. But I think that he found some great cast members. Who are some of the other side characters that stand out to any of you? I'll let any of you jump in because I don't want
I just had one question about Goth, though.
Jeff.
That was one thing that I didn't always like, is this idea we were calling the butterfly Goth. It should have gotten its own nickname because that was the reference to the person it was inhabiting at the very beginning. So I understand why it's a through line, but at the same time, it's like we're calling the character Goth when it takes over Susan's song. Still. Yeah. So that's where I was like, I wish we had given it its own name. That
and
wasn't
it did say that it had its own name. And tried to pronounce it, and it could have, just riff off of something from that.
Yeah, exactly. I wish we had kind of identified it more than just Goth, but I also understand where you needed to simplify it so people understood, oh, that's the same thing.
Because that was the only butterfly that we really got to know in any capacity. And of course, Peacemaker keeps it in a jar, and feeds it, But who are some of the side characters that stood out for any of you? Anybody jump in who wants to talk about someone they liked? I thought that a lot of the police casting, I thought they did some nice work with
that dude, her partner, whoever he was. I haven't seen him in a long time, and I was like, oh, I recognize this guy, sort of like general douchey guy from movies in the late 90s and early 2000s. He's been in some stuff where I feel like he plays kind of like a bro-y guy, and I was like, maybe I'm
that guy's name is Lachlan Monroe, and there's a lot of people who tweeted things like, oh, hey, I saw him in this one movie or whatever, and he's like, yes, this was one comment, he's like, yes, those are the only two things on my IMDb page.
I know,
and it's just but I think he gets it because he wasn't being a dick about it. You know what I mean?
Well, that's the thing is when you're just a working actor, good, he's probably paying his bills, but he still retains a decent level of anonymity. And unfortunately, what comes with that is people being like, "Oh, he was that guy from White Chicks or whatever it is." And he was in some comedy. I got to look this up.
And Will, if you could be, somebody sees you on Blackish or in Pam and Tommy, and they're like, "Oh, that's that guy from White Chicks." You'd be like, "Oh my God, my career is so much better than I ever thought it would be because I'm known for being in White Chicks."
When they make White Chicks 2 Book of Shadows, I'm in.
That guy definitely plays some kind of frat guy or something like that.
That's what I mean. Is and I feel bad pigeonholing him in that thing, but I just picture his face in some scene. I'm gonna find this.
I'm just gonna picture your face.
I thought that the police captain guy who ends up being originally Mern's friend and then turning it, he was a bit confusing. Because I thought he was a butterfly at first when Mern first is chit-chatting with him.
So I was like, oh, so when he became a butterfly, I'm like, wait, he wasn't already?
It was very confusing. That was at one point where I was like, oh, okay, that was not clear. That was not clear at all. I get because I feel like by the time we met him, we already knew Mern was a butterfly. So that's why it's it really didn't make sense for us not to expect that character to be a butterfly as well.
Yeah.
I think he was a Waller's operative or something, but he would have been better as a butterfly because, it would have seemed that Mern would have had some allies out there.
Yeah.
It was White Chicks, by the way.
He was in White Chicks
movie. Yeah,
and he was also in Riverdale. Unforgiven. That must have been a small role for him, but
92. He was pretty young.
Yeah, he was pretty young, but and. Those I love that he's the guy from White Chicks. That's pretty amazing. Actually.
If you're listening, Lachlan Monroe, I'm sorry, but you're the guy from
but he's look, when you work consistently, like you said, it's all about he can pay his bills from being an actor, and that's what it's all about. I thought that they somehow it doesn't always work when you have this group of people who are forced to work together and nobody really likes each other. Obviously, Harcourt and Economos had worked together before, so they knew each other, but you didn't really get the feeling that they were tight, But I think it worked really well that it evolved into how much, the sort of the bonding, and in how much they care about each other, and Peacemaker legitimately feeling betrayed, because and who he thinks is his friend and all that. And I think that dynamic doesn't always work when you these people hate each other and now they're friends. And I think in a movie that's much harder to do. because you don't have as much time. I think that they did have enough time. And I guess when you go on a stakeout where the goal is to assassinate a family, including the children, which all the stuff about the ugly looking kid, it was just like, oh man, there's a kid that got cast in that role.
Yeah. Every time there's like character disparagement, even for Economos, like the end credit scene where it's entirely, he's like, why is every joke you make about my physical appearance? Like,
yeah, that was great.
There is a degree to which in humor, like, there is some shaming going on for that kind of person or an ugly kid. And like, I always wonder now, especially in 2022 as an actor, like, it probably still stings a little bit to be like, you're the fat guy we're gonna make jokes about all this time.
You mean when
Buzz,
you get
your girlfriend Woof?
Yeah. She had a picture of that poor girl her whole life. She like never did anything else but be the ugly girlfriend in Home Alone.
You mean when you get sides, the script pages for your audition, and okay, so you're reading for ugly kid. You're reading for fat guy.
Ugly kid, fat guy, dye beard. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
I mean, I guess the revenge is that now Buzz plays fat guy across the street in movies like Kimmy.
And Home Sweet Home Alone, where he reprises his role as,
of course.
I almost said Biff McAllister because he's
Biff McAllister.
Biff McAllister. Dominicus Saxon points out Vigilante was really the glue that helped the group together. I don't know. I mean, I think that legitimately
says the guy with the comedian avatar.
Yeah, here you go.
But I think that I mean, clearly, she ends up being in charge. Like, clearly Harcourt is the one that does keep them together. And of course, she is now, that actress, Jennifer Holland, I believe is her name, is now engaged to be Mrs. James Gunn. So
worked out well for her.
Yeah, exactly.
Success
Next she'll get to be in Slither too.
Which I believe is called Slitherer.
I know that the success of the show depends. Like, I think he proposed once he realized it was a hit. He was like, okay, I think this is going to work. We did it. We can.
If he had done Book of Boba Fett and she had been on that, then he would have been like, I mean, clearly I'm making a lot of bad decisions in my life.
I think I agree that, like, a story wise, Harcourt is the thing that holds them together, but B story wise and thematically and emotionally, Adebayo is the thing that holds them together.
Yeah, I think Adebayo is essentially us. I think, and I've talked a lot about this, that if you think about your really good pilot episodes of TV shows, usually it's somebody's first day on the job. ER is that way, Scrubs is that way, and Not Everything's Set in the Hospital. Homicide, Life on Street is that way. It's Bayless is starting, in the homicide unit. So it's like, everybody knows everything, and now you're the new person. Well, we're the new person, so I think that works. Yeah, and I think Adebayo being conflicted is important. Her mom being Amanda Waller, it makes it interesting. But then also, there's that moment. It's in the last episode, I think, where she's like, she's like, I'm made for this shit. Like, she's actually like really good at like, I can kill a bunch of people. I just didn't want to,
She had training.
What's that?
She had the training for it.
Oh yeah.
Used it.
Yeah, no, if Amanda Waller's your mom, you probably knew kids like in your neighborhood that for their Sweet 16, they were getting new cars. And, she was having them go to, some like elite martial arts camp for the summer, like, no, you got to learn all of it. Yeah. And, I think that her backstory is interesting in terms of her mom. And I think it's nice when a show has sort of like, she has a same-sex partner, but it's not a big deal. It's not what she's about. It's just it's the aside. And I think like, I think that a lot of what inclusion is when it's not like, this is a really big deal.
Look at the gay characters.
Like, I have a wife.
Right.
What? You're a girl. And even like Peacemaker is like, he just has a couple of like bro questions about, logistics and stuff, but it's not like weird to him at all, Yeah.
Well, and of course, he's bisexual, which is, I think, cool. I mean, that they could go into more detail, I think, later, but that's
season 2.
Yeah. But I agree. I mean, I've been saying that especially about like nerd content. Studios, it feels really performative when they do it. Like, I remember when Beauty and the Beast was coming out, and they're like, it features the first gay characters in a Disney movie, and it's like two dudes dancing at the very end for like 5 seconds, and you're like, you guys just love to fucking jerk yourselves off, thinking you're doing everybody a big fucking favor, but making them the lead characters and having that be their like any kind of queer identity or any kind of otherwise unrepresented person being a character, and not having it be a big deal. It's just what they are, and normalizing that in content as opposed
Plus,
to being
do they not remember Zazu and the Lion King, voiced by Rowan Atkinson? You know,
there's
believe me, it's not the first gay character in a Disney movie. That's what I'm saying. You know,
Mr. Flick Your Bean.
Yeah, that's a nice one, Sammy. I mean, you know, let's not single out anyone, but let's just say one of the dwarves. You know, I'm fairly sure, but yeah, I know, and a lot of times, you know, it's I don't want to go down this, but it is one of the things about like the current incarnation of Doctor Who is that every side character has like a date with a same-sex partner planned, is going to, you know, it's like it's like there's never like the guy who wants to ask out a girl, or it's always the same. And it's like, well, when you do it to everybody, if all of your background characters are like that, it doesn't, you know, it doesn't do the right thing, you know. It's just everybody being accepted, you know. And it's like when you're you know, if the show Friends, just one of them had been, I don't know, Asian or black or something, it wouldn't have been like such a big deal,
right?
But because they were all white, when there's like, and now Ross has a black girlfriend, what?
You
know.
So
like in season 7, by the way, you know, it was not early. Well, I don't want to miss too much of this, so let's talk a little bit about, you know, I really did like watching the team go together, you know, grow together. The bonding over Hanoi Rocks was not something I ever expected. The 11th Street Kids, and the photo is actually a photo that Jennifer Holland took with her phone, and her finger is actually in the photo that they used. James Gunn posted it.
Right.
He's like, this is actually from her phone. So I think, you know, little things like that are nice. And the actors, the cast, like their text chain with each other is titled 11th Street Kids. So that means they all have iPhones, because if you have just one holdout with an Android, you can't name your text chain. Yeah, my new brother-in-law is the one person.
But WhatsApp is for, and you can name your group in WhatsApp.
I don't want another app.
You can share higher quality.
I've got like 9 fast food apps on my phone. I don't want one more app. You know, I got to keep track of the deals from Wendy's. But I really liked that, and I think I was not expecting. By the way, Steve Agee, we're talking about Diary, we're talking about Economos. He's great. I mean, he's great with Jeff. I think you're the one to remind him. He's like a homeless guy on New Girl. He was also on the Sarah Silverman program. And I always thought he was funny. He's just as a comedian, and really getting to shine. And just that moment when the aforementioned Lachlan Monroe is like, hey, what's with your human's beard? And he's like, I can't lie. And like the vulnerability and the emotion, I'm like, I didn't think Steve Agee was going to get that moment on the show, but it makes you care about them so much more. And even Peacemaker's like, oh, maybe I was a little bit of a dick. You know. But John, what are like highlights for you, characters, some of the things, you know, just what stands out for you, you know, on the show?
I really liked Myrn. I just loved his arc. I loved his confession that, you know, this person that I took over was a horrible, horrible person, but he was still redeemable.
Yeah.
And just that moment of honesty and that heartbroken feeling of, I had to kill him, but I know that if he could have been a better person, that meant a lot to me.
Yeah. Another thing James Gunn wrote was how much he liked working with that actor, but he had already written that what happens to the character. Like he was like, I wish I didn't already plan to kill him, but he's like, but he's in Guardians of the Galaxy 3, which he's working on literally right now. So it's like, so he found a way to keep working with him. But I thought the Myrn character was very interesting. The moment when, you know, it didn't really seem like he was a butterfly. I think right when she first has on the X-ray helmet, but before she sees it, that's when you're like, oh, that would make sense. But even when he's sitting at home Oh no, because we knew before then. We knew when he's sitting at home just watching. Is he watching Ransom? Is that the movie that he's watching? The Mel Gibson?
He is
movie.
watching Ransom. Yeah.
Yeah. So that
I
means
remember
that
thinking the same thing, being like, why is he fucking watching this?
why is he not watching the part where he says, "Give me back my son"?
Yeah.
And just the emotionless way he's watching it, I'm like, well, that's how I would watch Ransom. I don't, so that reveal, that was a legitimate surprise, I think. And I did really like that character. I can see, it's funny how like unceremonious a lot of the actual deaths are on the show. Like when Peacemaker kills his father, it could have definitely been one of those, I can't do it. And he's like, no, I put a bullet in my dad's brain. And,
I think,
honestly, it's fine.
That's a unique James Gunn thing, I think. Like subverting all the things.
Well, I mean, look at his name.
Evil 2N.
Dominica Saxon thinks all the main characters had really well done story arcs. Kudos to the writers. You know who the writers are in this show? James Gunn. He wrote every episode, and he said that he actually didn't have writers' rooms for this. Really? I think there's a couple that he didn't direct, but he directed a lot of them. But it's just not the way that he works. Obviously, he usually does movies, but and it's just, and he's gonna write season 2, so that's why any of the theories that are out, like Bane is going to be in season 2. He's like, this is all bullshit. I haven't even told anybody what I have planned yet. And I'm not sure. I'm not sure what I have planned yet. You know what I mean? He's like, he's only got some of it worked out.
Plus he gets more money. He doesn't have to split that. Well, now he does. He's getting married.
Yep. Well, let's see what happens to Harcourt on the show.
Yeah.
Big prenup. Yeah, and what about you, Jeff? What are favorite things or characters, even if it's something we've talked about? What are some of the real standouts that you're like? Maybe it was even a scene where you're like, I liked this show, but now I really like this show. Is there anything like that, or any character?
It was just such a good show from start to finish, right? Like I thought all the things that normally take me out of a show like this, like production budget or like the costumes just looking stupid and wonky, right. He had answers for all of it. So it just was a really well done show. There's not a moment that I can specifically think of where I was like, now I'm in, because I think that speaks to how good of a show it was. I was sold right off the bat from the pilot. I was like, okay, I see where you're going. I like this. We're going to actually have like more, we're going to resolve things that we've started instead of just being like, and here's a new thing several months later when everybody's forgotten about those things from before. So yeah, it was just a really good series. I thought John Cena did well. I wasn't surprised by that though. Like I feel like he's had little cameo roles that he's done well in for years, right? He had that one in Trainwrecked.
That's as soon as you said that, I was just like, oh yeah, he was really funny in that.
Yeah.
So I wasn't surprised. I think he was perfect for this role. I think James Gunn is really good at writing these kinds of stories, right? Like he knows how. I think it's a testament to his capability as a writer to, and maybe it's a smart decision that he makes to get these more obscure characters so we don't have all these baked in expectations. And then he knows how to tell a really interesting and engaging superhero story vis-a-vis Guardians and Suicide Squad and Peacemaker. We can connect to these characters because we don't already have this established, like, oh, that's who this person means to me, connection with a lot of these characters. And so he can tell these stories that are like fleshed out and interesting and obviously speak to his love of the comic books and how they tell those stories and what makes them more interesting, I think. Yeah. That's just my take on it, I guess.
No, I think, and I don't know. I think, and Will, I'll ask you the same question, but I think that probably everybody will agree. This was an 8-episode series and they had 8 episodes worth of story. A lot of times you'll watch a show that has 8 episodes worth of story and it's at least 13, sometimes more.
Right. Yeah.
And in the case of Book of Boba Fett, they had 2 episodes worth of story and it wasn't even about the guy in the title of the show. Yes, I'm very hard. I'm still.
We'll never recover, honestly.
That's true.
It's really the last, when they stabbed Jesus with the spear just to confirm he was dead. That's how it feels.
That's what that was.
Yeah.
What about you, Will? Some of the just the a favorite moment. Was there a moment, because you were talking about, and there's somebody that's sometimes in the chat on these shows, Ivan Soto, and he didn't want to watch Peacemaker for exactly the reason you said, and he didn't watch it. he's just like, I didn't like the way he killed Rick Flag, and he was
Mhm.
he just couldn't wrap his head around that character.
Right.
So you were approaching it sort of with that, but you watched it anyway. And was it because, especially like Will and I mean, sorry, Jeff and I were like, are you watching this thing?
Yeah, I
You
think I
haven't watched it
started.
yet, right?
I
Yeah.
always had. I mean, I wanted to. I think
Yeah.
I didn't start until it was like 3 or 4 episodes in.
I think the first 3 went up at first. Or
Okay, then I was a couple
yeah,
weeks behind.
but still, yeah. So go ahead.
I think the thing that's like, but that's good writing, right? Is like taking a character that otherwise like and giving him like an arc and making him redeemable in a way. I mean, he still kills people, but presumably now he's just going to kill bad guys. But and giving you a reason to like them. You know, it's like, oh, that's right. That's when people care about characters and want to treat them with respect and give them like emotional growth and stuff. And you know, just writing him essentially as like a perpetual 15-year-old boy is super funny. And you asking the question like, what's the scene or what's this moment that stuck out to you? Maybe like, oh, I'm really in. And I was like, oh, there's a bunch of stuff, but like the first thing that popped into my head that I remember being like, I think I would do exactly the same thing is when he's trying to run from the cops and he takes tons of time to steal vinyls.
Yep.
I was like,
by the way, it's funny you reference
I
that
would
scene.
do that.
I'm gonna let you finish your thought, but it's funny you mentioned.
No,
that
I just
scene,
like it felt, and it also felt like something like I would write and love to act. The humor of that, like it was just a very like left turn decision on purpose to clearly show like who this person is. And I love scenes that demonstrate characters in their behavior that with like specific things that you're like, that's just one of those things where you're like, this is exactly who this guy is. Like, despite everything that's fucking happening right now, he will stop down for like 5 minutes to steal all this precious vinyl from
precious
dead girls
vinyl, which Jeff, I
apartment.
know you've amassed a lot of vinyl lately, and I think you could understand, you know.
Yeah, I showed Will my collection. He was very impressed.
We'll talk about that in the future. And we know what you mean by your collection. Oh, jeez. Cami Egan in the chat. Good to see you, Cami Egan. I want to know how Judo Master did not become a butterfly. Do you think the Flaming Hot Cheetos had anything to do with it? You know, that might be exactly what it has to do with it. But maybe they just need somebody that like believes in the cause, but isn't part of like the hive mind. You know, maybe they wanted Peacemaker instead of, you know, why Goff was, you know, didn't just, I don't know, inhabit him in some way. They just they need people that are actually people. And
that was an alternate ending that Peacemaker just allied with the butterflies.
There was an ending that Peacemaker was on their side.
Yeah.
Wow. Interesting theory. He was always eating them. I thought he was like the bodyguard, not just a nobody they could use. Yeah, I like that the Judo Master story is not tidied up. You know, it's you know, we can go to that. So you're talking about the scene where he takes all the vinyl, and it does come after the scene that that John mentioned earlier, where he's in his underwear dancing. And that scene is very important. It is not because of the underwear. I'm not going to say I minded it. By the way, our friend Liev loved this show, and I immediately said it's because. Yeah, no, he was raving about it on Instagram. That's and so
But he was upset when the dragon died.
Yeah, well, that was his favorite character. Yeah. No, but that's funny you say that. The first thing that I wrote to him though was like, well, just because John Cena's underwear. He's like, duh. Yeah. But he was just it's if you think about him, like it's right in his sensibility, you know, just the jokes and the humor and stuff. But the moment that he gets so excited that he puts on a song by London Choir Boys and he dances to almost the whole song. Okay. So that's the beginning of where I was like, oh, this is actually something special. They have like one sort of hit called 7 o'clock, which shows up, I think, in the second episode. The song they pick is obscure from an obscure band. And they spend a lot of screen time with it. Yeah. And I'm just like, okay. And that is part of it. And then you get this tone for the style of music that he likes, which is what some people call hair bands. Some people that are from that industry feel like that is you know, it's a derisive term. Try to be more inclusionary. Yeah. Late 80s, early 90s hard rock is a nicer way to refer to that, but glam metal, that's a little nicer.
I like glam metal because the glam part of it always appealed to me.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Glam is very important to this.
Yeah, right, exactly. And so so having some of that music, which some of these songs were very popular. There's a song by Firehouse that was definitely at least a top 20 single, Baby Don't Treat Me Bad. It's late in there. But they used this song by the band Faster Pussycat that my friend Dan, that was literally his favorite band when we were in high school, was Faster Pussycat. They have a song called House of Pain. And you guys all know that song because they play the entire song in this show. And the lyrics, it's about the singer, Tammy Down, had a bad childhood and he wrote about it. Well, the song is him remembering his terrible childhood. And I'm like, so not only does James Gunn play this song that was a moderate hit, 30 years ago, but he uses it in a way where it's like, no, listen to the lyrics. This ties directly into it. Like he's in that deep. And he was not really a fan of this style of music before this project, but he just kept adding to like his personal Spotify. He would find these songs and he found stuff that he thought really worked. And by the way, the official Peacemaker Spotify playlist, for those of you who have not canceled Spotify as a show of solidarity to Neil Young, and as many of the Bladtcast Nation has done, it's phenomenal. And by the way, I love what I love. By the way, John, is that I know it's 1 o'clock there. I know it's your day off, so of course you're having a beer. We can't.
I know. I was looking at you like, dang it, and then I was like, oh, it's a different
Rough Diamond.
Oh.
That sounds great.
It's a little brewery just north of San Antonio in Blanco, Texas.
Love it.
If you guys are ever in San Antonio, I'll take you there.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, now I got reason.
Drinks are on me.
So the music. All right. I'm going to clip that out and put it on my phone and remind you. Be like,
right.
you did say you were going to pay. And then Will comes back from the bar. Yeah, I just put on your tab. He's like double fisting like 2 giant pitchers. He's like, what?
Yeah.
But
just for me to drink.
Oh yeah. I'm sorry. I thought that was implied.
Yeah.
He's got a straw in each one. And
the helmet.
I'll butt chug the scorpion bowl.
So yeah, just the usage of the music, because it fits in with this character. And John Cena sitting at the piano playing Home Sweet Home, and they don't even use the song until the next episode. It doesn't like dissolve into the song. It's just him playing Home Sweet Home by Motley Crue. And as that shows up on the Spotify playlist and it says John Cena, I'm like, I assume
he learned
how to play that song on the piano. I'm just guessing. I don't know. I want to believe that it's real. So just let me. Okay.
He can be a multi-talented man, wrestler, actor, pianist.
Yeah. I'm sorry. What?
Pianist.
that was with the tidy whities. And it's just exciting. Like some of the music, the fact, like I reference Hanoi Rocks being a major story point. And it makes sense that this is the music that he would like. It would mean a lot to him. It's from when he was a kid. And it's also, if you are an America fuck yeah kind of guy, and I mean that literally from the Team America song. That's why I said America fuck yeah. You would, I think, love this music that he loves. And huge kudos for finding a very obscure Norwegian hair metal band, but I'm using the term. They are very obscure in this country. I think that they didn't even win the Eurovision competition like, I don't know, 13 years ago. So this band Wigwam has the song that we've heard many times, Do You Want to Taste It? And it's from like a while ago. And they've been around for a little while, and then they came back. And their management dropped them 3 days before the show premiered.
Whoa.
And James Gunn was very happy for them that by week 8 of Peacemaker, I guess it's really week 6 or 5 or whatever, they had it's very specific, but the number 1 most streamed rock song.
Oh, that's awesome.
Wigwam, Do You Want to Taste It? And
that's a good fuck you to their manager who didn't believe him.
So you couldn't be happier.
That $100 check in his face.
Look at this Warner Brothers movie.
I still don't know what it means to give the dog the invisible bone. That's why I started with that. I still don't get it, but it sounds dirty.
Like bestiality.
Yeah, well, kind of. Yeah.
I found a karaoke version of it last night online. I'm going to learn it.
Yeah. John, I have also found that. So
nice.
we'll get our pal Jason Blair in for some virtual karaoke. He's been itching for that for a while. And so that song, it makes me happy. I love the fact that they use it in the final episode during like just a massacre fight sequence, and then it kind of slows down after Hardcore falls. So that song is great. That song works, but of course it's so iconic for the thing that we have to talk about before we wrap up in a few minutes. The title sequence to the show. There's a handful of shows that the skip intro option should never come up. One of them is X-Men the Animated Series. You should never skip that. And also on this, I think I screenshotted it and I tweeted after one episode and I zoomed in on it. I'm like, are you kidding me? No, of course not. I'm not gonna. And the story of that is so amazing because the choreographer of that dance sequence, there were very strict COVID protocols on this set, and they couldn't, so she had to work it out. So she taught all the dance moves to her husband, who came onto the set and taught it to all of the actors. And her husband is Alan Tudyk. So there is video. There are photos of him showing a lot of the moves. And here's why that works. The sequence works so well for me. Nobody's got a smile on their face. The tongue is not in cheek. Everybody is giving it their all. Even Robert Patrick, who admitted that he's a terrible dancer. And
he does
James
a weird wiggle move. Well, because I don't know what he's doing. Does,
as someone who was not good in the school musicals, I understand when choreography happens around you very well, actually. And that was one of those. But Hardcore has like the really difficult like marionette moves, and this one, and then the flying thing lyric is there's so many little nuances. It's just so delightful. But John, I can see how you showed it to your wife out of context. She's like, "What are you fucking trying to make me watch?"
Yeah. And originally, the first episode when I watched it, and again, when Peacemaker was first announced, and even right up until the time it dropped, I was not entirely sure I was going to watch it.
Interesting. Okay.
I mean, because Peacemaker wasn't a great character, at least in the Suicide Squad.
Sure.
When those opening credits start, I'm sitting there. If you remember the movie Hot Fuzz, when Nicholas Angel is just sitting there watching the play. that was me. Like, what the fuck am I watching?
Yeah.
But they really, at the very end, is really what caught me. Because there's two things that are there. The first thing is when Judo Master, if you look here very carefully, he pops out of a hole in the floor.
Yeah.
And creeps over to Peacemaker. What the hell is he going to do? What does he do? He jumps up on his shoulder. Right?
Yeah.
The second thing is Eagly, which of course should be everybody's top 2-3 characters in the show.
Agreed.
Lands, right? He's got his wings spread, right? To end the number. Well, everybody is like breathing heavily from the dance number. If you look closely, Eagly looks down, shuffles his feet like he's missed his mark, and then looks back up at the camera with his wing spread.
Yeah.
That did it for me. That was it. I'm in. I'm all in right there.
And I love that they also hold on it for an extra 5 seconds, and you're like,
yes,
okay. And they just that's what I mean. These little attentions to detail that James Gunn I think is very good. It's so funny. Like, I'm truly still I'm not big up on the I almost said Suicide Squad. Who's the Marvel group?
The second Guardians movie. I memory serves that you liked the first Guardians when you saw it, but then it sat in your head and you didn't like it as much.
Yeah.
But I know that you did not like the second one.
Yes.
But
this, for me,
you did sit down in that movie in the middle of a fight with your now ex-wife. So
that's true. I did.
That may have
intoxicated.
I don't love that movie, but I also think that might not have helped your enjoyment of it.
Probably not.
Yeah.
But this was I think even the movie The Suicide Squad, you only get so much time. Like with a show like this where he gets to write 8 episodes, he really fully just gets to put all of himself in such a nuanced way into this that this is my favorite James Gunn thing, I think.
And sometimes you feel like the way he talks about it, this might be James Gunn's favorite James
I
Gunn
feel
thing,
it, yeah. I mean, he's like, you mean I could take all these obscure bands and music and put them in this show?
And we'll talk about the autonomy he had in our final couple minutes right after we figure out this part of it. But Yeah, just from the chat, Cammy Egan. Normally I fast forward opening credits, but I just had to watch it every week. I thought about it on weeks where like I was like on a little bit of a time crunch. I'm like, all right, this episode's 44 minutes. I've got about 46. I'm like, nope, still watching it. So Dominica Saxon, you tried to get, I thought your wife did watch it with you. So she got perturbed. And great point from Sam Whitfield. I want to see a Bladtcast recreation of the dance. And Dominica Saxon says Patreon it.
If we do the recreation, I want to be Robert Patrick.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, there's not enough of us. And that's what I was going to say. My final point about the opening number is there's characters that are only in a couple episodes. There's characters who don't show up till the middle of the season, and they're all in there. And the guy who plays the janitor, he's in 2 episodes and the opening sequence. And he wanted to be in the opening sequence. So each time he came, the way that quarantine worked in Canada at this time, you had to go to a hotel for 2 weeks. And then if you tested negative for COVID after the 2 weeks, then that's when you could go work. So he did that 3 separate times to be on the show for the 2 episodes he's in. And then a 3rd time just to be in the opening sequence. That's how much he wanted to be in. And look, I got 2 kids at home. If I could spend 6 weeks in a hotel room and not be allowed to go out, it's not my nightmare. I'm just going to say that, like, wait, I can bring as many books and, and music and all the streaming options of the world and just have to stay in a room. Yeah, I'm good. I can do that. They're going to bring food to me. Yeah, I can do that. So yeah. And it's interesting because James Gunn said, like, somebody said, like, so I guess you have to redo the opening for season 2. He's like, well, yeah, almost everyone's dead, like most of the characters in there. So, we could get a new song. We could get the same song with some new moves. I don't know. But
I just retweeted it, but James Gunn posted somebody had a visual graphic teaching the choreography for the song. So
so you just reposted it. Okay.
I retweeted it. Yeah.
So
we can just stare at that and figure it out.
Oh yeah, I see. I know I could do this in a more professional way, but I see that. Yeah. So Wills has sent us the steps are right here, and you can find that on James Gunn's Twitter because he needs me to give shout outs for where you can follow him on Twitter. Yeah. So great show. Love the show. And the fact that they have so we haven't really dropped a lot of spoilers. We talked about characters who died. If you like Peacemaker and you've seen it, but you haven't seen the finale, we're going to wrap up after this. You just turn off the show. We'll love you. We'll see you next time. Okay. Because there is a huge spoiler and shocked that spoiler actually happens in the context of the show. And for me personally, more shocked at the reaction to it from certain little pockets of fandom. To me, it's amazing. And again, I've told you that we're going to spoil something. So that was your last chance. It's amazing that we have Jason Momoa and Ezra Miller show up as the Suicide Squad. I mean, as the Justice League.
Genuinely surprised. It was ruined for me, but only that there were silhouettes. I still didn't know that they were actually.
Oh, that's great.
In it
At least it wasn't that. Yeah.
So I still had that. It was nice.
Yeah, and there's some question about James Gunn shot it with a Batman silhouette and a Cyborg silhouette, and that was the one thing that DC told him. He said he knows what the answer is, but he doesn't think he can say. He's like, I don't know what I can say, but I think it has to do with future projects. So for whatever reason, he couldn't have Cyborg and Batman there. But the fact that we still had, Wonder Woman and Superman, and it's great for the actors who played the stand-ins because they were allowed to post like Instagram pictures of them. And the actress who was the Wonder Woman, she's like, I had Gal Gadot's hair, I had her costume on. I'm like, that's all great that they had that kind of access. And James Gunn's like, yeah, I wrote it that way, and nobody complained. So I was like, all right, I guess we're going to film it. And I think, they weren't shot when they were in production. The scene with Ezra Miller's dialogue was filmed on the set of Guardians 3 more recently.
Oh, really?
And they dropped it in. Yeah. Which, look, when Marvel can cooperate in some way with DC, I don't know, it feels good that it's like, all right, you could definitely be a dick there. And have made it like, no, James, you're gonna have to go to a different soundstage on the other side of Atlanta, or whatever.
Between the two worlds and fandoms, James Gunn is the Peacemaker.
Oh, I like that. Yeah. That's a nice one. And just the back and forth, because there's so much shit talking from Peacemaker throughout the course of the series. you know, he's clearly intimidated by all the real superheroes and what's good about them, and the idea that Aquaman fucks fish, and just that back and forth like made people so upset. But it's like clearly Aquaman and Barry are bros. That is the takeaway from either cut of Justice League. And just like, it's not a joke. And the fact that he says, fuck you, Barry. I'm like, I love him. I love him even more now, you know?
Jason Momoa is the guy. And he's John Cena-esque in his humor. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And like, he's of course the guy. And that version of Aquaman is that like, he would totally like that joke. If you could make it rated R, like that would have been in, well, I guess Justice League was rated R, but there would have been more of that, I think, if they let him.
Well, only the Snyder cut was rated R, right?
Yeah, that's what I mean.
The Whedon cut was not, and John would know because he saw it 7 times in the theater.
I don't consider that as an existing version of the movie,
but not anymore.
I agree.
What did you think, John, of that moment? You know, getting to see the Justice League shows up, and you know, look, like Will say, even if it had been the silhouettes, that's still like, okay, that's funny.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely. I think that you know, like you said, there's been some controversy about it. There was, first of all, the controversy that, well, you know, Aquaman, and you know, is such a great character, and they've ruined it because they make the jokes about him fucking fish. No, that's exactly what Jeff Johns did like 10 years ago. They incorporated that into the character, that he rises above those jokes. He shows them that he really is a badass. You know, and you know, he's a great character, and also the fact that if you look back at Zack Snyder's Justice League, Flash was still kind of intimidated by Aquaman. So now they have evolved to a point where Flash can make a joke at Aquaman's expense and everything's okay. That actually shows an evolution of the characters. That's great. I love it. I love every bit of it.
Yeah, and Jeff, as someone who has fucked fish on a number of occasions, how did you feel?
No. A manatee's not a fish. Get it straight.
I sit corrected. You're right.
No, I thought it was funny. I think, you know, even if it's just the silhouettes, it's funny. But if it was just the silhouettes, it's played. It's the ending of Shazam. The fact that we get the dialogue scenes is really what puts it over the top. Makes it a really funny beat, makes it really engaged with the rest of the universe, even though it literally was born out of a straight up DCEU-esque movie, right? Yeah. So I loved it. I thought it was hilarious. I like the Jason Momoa. You know, I was thinking about it when you guys were talking about it. He's basically like the surf bro Aquaman, and that's perfect. That's exactly who he needs to be at this point. Like the guy who you just are kind of like, oh yeah, you hang out down by the beach a lot. Okay, that's fine.
And Will, I really felt excited for you because when it comes to the character the Flash, I feel like there's nothing that you would like to say more than "fuck you, Barry."
It's true.
Because
I do like
who is your Flash?
Wally West. Come on.
Yeah. So fuck you, Barry.
I mean, I do like Ezra Miller. It's okay. I think he's a fun turn for that character and makes it more than traditional Barry Allen, who is very sleepy and boring, like the one on television. I'm sorry. But I think Ezra's read of it feels more like Wally West, and I think that's why I like it. That's how I would probably do that character. But yeah, deep down, he gets a good fuck you, Barry.
Yeah, it turned into like the idea. So like the backlash was like, oh, Batman says fuck in the Snyder cut, and that's a big deal, but this is okay. I'm like, dude, it's a fucking joke. And it's like no one really, you know, this is not saying that Aquaman really fucks fish. It's saying literally the exact opposite of it. You know, that's why he's like, fuck you, Barry. And Barry doesn't think that, you know, it's just like people like, you know, and it's like, you need a little bit more fun in, you know, Zack Snyder for what's great about his movies. They're not really that fun, you know? So maybe putting a fun spin into it helps. What were you going to say, Jeff?
I like the idea of Batman beating the shit out of somebody and being like, you motherfucker. And then Alfred in his ears just like, excuse me, sir, that would be one deposit in the swear jar.
Right, exactly. It's Captain America in Age of Ultron language. Yeah. And I think that, and look, I mean, you want to talk about poor usage of swearing. I mean, the way that people reacted to that trailer for Titans, fuck Batman. You know, it was just like, now that is embarrassing.
That I
This
was like,
just,
God,
yeah.
And
But
I
in
mean,
context of the show, that actually, I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, Titans, as far as I'm concerned, is like the worst of the DC shows that came from the DC Universe app. But I mean, within context, it makes sense.
Yeah.
people should be happy that Jason Momoa and James Gunn and everybody involved have such a good time doing these things with these characters that Jason Momoa said yes, went to wherever he needed to go,
Yeah.
put the fucking costume on to
Yeah.
let himself be made fun of for fucking fish, to then tell Barry Allen to fuck off. Like
Yeah.
the money and time that was involved just to make that gag work, because those people have such a good time and care about these characters. Like, grow up. Like people
Yeah,
who are
and I
critical
mean,
of that
I
stuff.
don't know. Shouldn't it be encouraging, John, that it's like, because you're gonna get another Aquaman movie. We know the Flash movie's coming,
Right.
Yep.
so it's like, yeah, but the concept of these characters are still the Justice League. You know, there will be another Wonder Woman movie, so it's like, you know, Justice League is still a thing. You know, the movie as it was released theatrically, there, you know, it didn't do what they wanted it to, but it's like, you should be excited that it's like, no, the Justice League is real. And just that throwaway line to Amanda Waller, like, send the Justice League. I didn't think like, oh, well, at the end we're going to see the Justice League, you know.
Yeah. Or her. I actually didn't even think we'd see.
We saw her like 3 times, you know. I
Yeah.
was surprised that we saw her as much as we did. Like when she was like on the phone or the laptop in the first one, I'm like, all right, that's going to be it. But we saw her a couple of times. I thought that that was nice. And Dominica Saxon's comment made me laugh. Now I want to grudge fuck a stingray as payback for Steve Irwin. And honestly, I don't know if we can go anywhere beyond that. I think that puts a pin. But, you know, there is a lot more to say about Peacemaker. So if you want more Peacemaker conversation, when I had mentioned that I was doing this episode, a couple of friends from AfterBuzz who also have been on Marvel Movie News with me really wanted to talk about it. So you can join us next week for episode 480 of the Bladtcast, where we will talk more about Peacemaker. And for people watching live right now, in just about, let's do the quick math, 3 hours at 2:30 Pacific time, 5:30 Eastern, you can join myself, Michael Shirley, and Nate Miller live. We'll talk more Peacemaker. I've talked a lot of Peacemaker over the last hour and 20 minutes, so I'm going to really let them gush about it. But that's how excited people, everybody's excited about this show. This is the anti-Book of Boba Fett. It is more like Mandalorian, where for the most part, everybody loved that show. I feel like the way, you know, I don't know people who watched this and were like, yeah, it wasn't for me. I think people just who looked at it and go like, I don't want to watch it. Those are the people who it's not for. And Will, it must be, to me, it's great to have, you know, there are the handful of things like Wonder Woman, the first one and only the first one, you know, that seems to be what people agree on in terms of recent DC content. You know, there's a handful of stuff where people are like, no, I really liked that. And this is one of those.
This is one of those. And I do think that the response to Zack Snyder's Justice League was pretty overwhelmingly positive too. So
yeah, for people who sat through the 4 hours, they were like, you know, and look, more was better in that case. And I always use the example for the first Star Trek film, Star Trek, the motion picture is not great, but it's better if you see the director's cut with 12 extra minutes. There's things that just make more sense. And if it makes more sense, the story works better. And that there's problems with that movie that I could talk about, but it sometimes you put a little bit more back in, and it just makes sense. So
it was like Batman vs Superman, the extended cut of that same thing. It's 30
Yeah.
minutes, and people were like, "Why does it need to be 3 hours?" And now every fucking superhero movie is 3 goddamn hours.
Well,
so
speaking of which, in a
Everyone
couple
was
of
wrong.
episodes, Will and I and Jeff will join us, and we'll react to The Batman. 2 hour, 56-minute running time. And, you know, John, obviously, you're welcome to join us for that as well, to have you back soon. When do you have tickets for, John? Because I feel like I know the answer to this.
Actually, believe it or not, I don't have tickets for it yet. The reason
what?
I'm actually starting a new job next week, so I'm not sure exactly what my schedule is going to be. So I got to kind of figure that out first. Yeah.
Oh, so day drinking is going to be cut back with the new job, is what you're saying.
No, right?
It's at a brewery. Yeah. Well, Will and I are going Thursday at 7 p.m. So look for us.
Nice.
I'll make sure to spoil it for you, suckers.
Yeah. Look at every movie theater in Los Angeles. And well, thank you to everybody, and thanks for a great chat. John, if people want to find your show, where I know you did talk about Peacemaker, you usually talk about politics, but where can people find you?
RagingRhinoPodcast.com, and of course on Twitter at Raging Rhino Pod.
And and of course, Will Sterling, co-host of History Rated R, and your co-host,
Yes,
Craig Smith, joined me on Biden Time. What was yesterday? As we talked about Ukraine, and you can find that on the Bladtcast YouTube channel. That was definitely one of those times where it's like I was at the hour mark, and I'm like, oh, I got like 2 more hours of stuff, but I'm not going to keep anybody.
Yeah,
you know.
And Craig's got 24 hours more shit that he could probably talk about too.
Yeah, so. And like unfortunately the Ukraine situation is going to be one that we'll be able to talk about for a while. Anything else you'd like to promote, William?
No. Check out History Rated R, the podcast.
And at Will Sterling _ and Jeff DeRay. Don't look for him on social media. He'll look for you, but he won't, but he would if he wanted to. Well, thank you, everybody. And as I mentioned, next episode, a little bit more on the Justice League with Michael Shirley and Nate Miller. But that's all for this time. We'll see you next time on the Bladtcast.